Let's talk about the Asiatic Exclusion League. Okay. In May 1905, a mass meeting was held in San Francisco to launch the Japanese and Korean Exclusion League. Okay. In 1907, the organization was renamed the Asiatic Exclusion League because they wanted to include the exclusion of Native Americans and Chinese immigrants in their agenda. They advocated for the white man's country and for the prohibition of Asian labor immigrants. Okay? Now, once the league was started, they immediately began working to prevent any increase of Asians along the western coastline. Now, the League used strong arm methods and violence against Asians to try to ensure the rigorous enforcement of the Chinese Exclusion Act and expand its provisions to other Asian immigrants. Now, the Chinese Exclusion Act, it banned the immigration of Chinese people for 10 years, okay? It's the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And it became permanent in 1902. And it was eventually repealed-ish, in 1943, okay? And you can hear more about that on my podcast, Almost Random, currently on Anchor and Spotify. Let's continue. Okay. Now, the Asian Exclusion League, they moved very quickly to broaden their goals, and they aimed to prevent immigration of all people of East Asian origin. Okay? Their collective aims were to spread false anti-Asian information and to sway legislation towards restricting immigrants. Okay? Now, their efforts were successful. Okay? Now, in response, General Ulysses S. Welch, he was Attorney General for the state of California, he began to apply a greater effort into enforcing laws that prohibited Asian ownerships of property. Okay? And because of the pressure that they exerted, President Theodore Roosevelt, he issued Executive Order 589 that ended the immigration of Japanese and Korean laborers from Mexico, Canada, and Hawaii into the United States. Okay? Now, the Asiatic Exclusion League, they were quite organized. Yep, they've got a 5-point agenda. Okay. The first one being they wanted to have the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. They wanted it to include the Japanese and Korean people. Yep. They wanted their members to pledge not to employ Japanese or Korean people, and they did not want their members to use any of the Japanese or Korean products. Okay? They wanted the schools to adopt a practice of segregating Japanese and Korean children. Okay? They wanted to have a campaign of calling attention to this menace to the president and to Congress. And then they wanted all labor and civic organizations in the state of California to pay a membership fee because, racism takes money. It does.